Charity, donate to the charity. I did not prepare an opening, but donate to Knitted Knockers, please, and support breast cancer awareness, and you are loved, you are wanted, and you got this. Now on with the video, because... I like wine. Like Roger. I like when episodes age like fine wine. Hi, I'm Kitty Monk, and I'm here to talk to you about South Park. Or more specifically, the times when their episodes came true. Now, South Park has been around for over 20 years, and its cutting-edge satire has always been pretty cutting-edge. I mean, why would we call it that if it weren't true? I think last year or the year before, I made a video on the top 10 times South Park did an episode that aged, which even if they did, there was still merit in them. So with some time passing, I believe it's high time to talk about the top 10 times South Park talked about something and it came true. So let's discuss, starting with the honorable mentions. This time, I have two honorable mentions. The first one is the episode Cripple Fight. The boys join the Scouts, led by Big Gay Al, and because of how he acts, the dads start to fear that Big Gay Al might be weird around the boys, if you catch my drift, or imprint on them.
You saying you're fine with this guy camping overnight, alone, with our boys? They could end up all talking all femme and prancing around like girls.
Whereas the boys already know him and stuff, so I don't really think it's that big of a fear. But there is one scene that kind of demonstrates their point, as far as they know.
What did you say?
I just called Cartman a name. He's a silly goose.
You do not say big silly goose. You call him an asshole like a normal kid.
I think this episode is pretty relevant today, especially with some people thinking that, say, teachers or authority figures brainwash or groom kids, like, oh, you read my kid a book and it turned him gay. Yes, as a teacher, I can say that we do that. It's not my fault y'all don't wash their grimy little hands. I don't like germs, and you think that teachers are glorified babysitters. Sorry for just doing our jobs. So they tell the Scouts, who, because of their policy, fire Big Gay Al for being gay, even though the word gay is literally in his name, but a lawsuit gets him back into the Scouts, which he rejects.
But freedom is a two-way street. If I'm free to express myself, then the Scouts have to be free to express themselves too.
The reason this is honorable is because, while I do think the whole plotline with the dads could happen today, I kind of disagree with the episode's message, just because I feel like you can misconstrue this as an excuse to be a jerk or a racist, like, oh, I can hate Latinos and think they're all terrorists because I have a right to my beliefs. Or you could say like, oh, Cartman has a right to hate Jewish people because he has a right to his beliefs.
They do what they think is best for kids. No matter how wrong we think they might be, it isn't right for us to force them to think our way. It's up to us to persuade.
Plus, this whole speech doesn't change their minds, even though I think the point of Big Gay Al saying this was like, I know they're good people, and I know if they hear me out, they'll change their minds, even though that didn't really happen before. Nor does the fact they actually hired a real pervert who took inappropriate pictures of the boys faze them. So yeah, I feel like that kind of takes away from this, but yeah, unfortunately, the dads being scared about what's going on in the classroom is unfortunately still relevant. Like, I'm surprised they haven't done an episode like that already. I mean, I guess they did a banned books episode with Butters, and maybe you can argue Pajama Day was their take on that, but you know what I mean. The second is Canada on strike. When I made my first list, I said I disagreed with the episode's point that you can't make a living online, especially with how interconnected our lives are.
For the promise of future online revenue. It will be a few years before digital distribution of media on the internet can be monetized to an extent that necessitates content producers to forego their fair value in more traditional media.
Obviously, there is no guarantee. You do need a little bit of luck on your side, but many of you had told me maybe I was wrong, since it also said you can't make a living just yet, and most of the creators featured were fleeting viral videos. So yeah, it does land a spot.
I really need a friend right now. Okay, dude, I'm here for you. Okay, so then get on Facebook and fertilize my crops? No. Please!
Oh, please, not every old person's on Facebook, usually. Is 25 old? South Park once talked about social media and how we overconsume it, but unlike King of the Hill, it had time on its side, so it wasn't dated the moment it premiered. Facebook, back when it first started getting big, has hit South Park, and everybody wants to get in on the action. But Stan, of course. While this episode has aged a tad, I mean, who really plays games on Facebook anymore, or does poke wars, or cares about having lots of friends?
Why won't you be friends with Grandma?
Dad, I just really don't want to pay attention to this
Grandma
thing.
is in the hospital, and you won't even be friends with her.
All right, Dad, I'll add Grandma as a friend.
That's better.
Well, there is one relevant side. Social media, kind of. Come on, it's still relevant today. Stan wants nothing to do with Facebook, but he's basically forced by society as a whole to get involved. Like making a profile he doesn't want, befriending people he doesn't want, and anything he does on Facebook gets highly scrutinized in the real world. Like when he's forced to like a photo from a total stranger, and Wendy treats it like he's cheating on her.
That's what Susan92 wrote on your Facebook wall. You give girls pictures of you in bunny outfits?
Susan92 is a friend of my grandma's and she's 92 years old.
Oh, come on. I'm somebody who likes stuff I disagree with on social media, especially Twitter, mostly so I can tell myself, like, oh yeah, I already saw this. Okay, I'm good. But humankind getting more connected via social media, well, you're kind of expected nowadays to have at least one account. Like, even more than back then. Like, if you don't have one or you don't post at least once in a while, people think there's something wrong with you or you have something to hide. And if you're in a job that's all about image, well, social media is kind of how you grow as a whole, or it could also hinder you. Jobs look at your social media often before making a decision on hiring. Schools look at your social media before letting you in. And everybody judges you based on this alone, when maybe you could have just done it because you felt like you had to, or maybe you're just putting it up there because you think that's what people want. Facebook might not be the juggernaut it once was, but hey, it's still big, so yeah, it fits. And you could easily substitute that for something like Instagram. Like, if you don't have any friends on Instagram or you don't post all that often, clearly there's something wrong with you, even though you might not be the type of person to like social media, or hey, maybe you're busy in life, so it depends.
Maybe handy cars are kind of economic natural selection, where the more diligent workers are weeding out the useless ones. Durr. Shut up, Mimsy!
Oh, this is so handy. I didn't realize this issue was so prominent. Was it really back then? Handy Car is a take on Uber and Lyft, back when rideshare apps were new and exciting. Like, it's weird to think how crazy it was to get one back then. Like, wow, I could finally go from the mall to my house without taking a bus. And now I practically use it like all the time. Plus, they're also tax deductible, BTW. But anyway, Timmy starts a rideshare service called Handy Car, which is basically Uber. At first, he does it to help his special ed class raise money for summer camp.
Timmy has raised $2,063. Alrighty, if you guys keep this up, we'll raise the money in no time.
But it soon turns into a huge booming business with lots of people, including Steve and Chris, using it to make extra money or support themselves. The problem is, this is hurting other people, like car salesmen and the taxi industry, and they band together to discuss what can be done about it.
And because he's handicapped, he can use special access points and parking spaces. That kid was born with an unfair advantage. Who is this rat?
With Mimsy, he says that ride-sharing is the future, but that doesn't mean they can't change their approach, like being nicer to their customers or trying to compete.
Why don't you guys just make your cars cleaner and nicer and try to be better to your customers so that you can compete? Just ignore my friend. He's mentally disabled.
People picked Handy Car for a reason, because it was more convenient. This episode features all models of rideshare, but Handy Car does win in wacky races, and Timmy is able to sell the company to Elon Musk. Wow, Elon goes so crazy he likes wacky races. I've never heard of him going crazy in real life. And what you might not know is, after this episode aired, Uber faced a bit of legal trouble, especially related to the taxi industry, with many fearing it would take their jobs.
Let me give you guys a hot news flash. If you want to hurt a crippled kid, you don't break his legs!
They took our jobs, or that Uber itself wasn't legal. In some countries, for instance, Uber was outright banned due to either its method of paying the drivers or due to competition. Now, Uber has mostly bounced back from this, but at the same time, it is still banned some places. For example, after much legal turnout, it no longer operates in Denmark as of 2017. It's still considered illegal in Hungary, and it was banned in Turkey. Heck, in the US, they even suspended operations for a couple of months in Oregon broken because of a legal ruling. Also, there's a bunch of actual Uber controversies like lobbying and data breaches, but go watch it on your own time. So shut up, Mimsy!
It's died at his school!
Sorry, Sharon,
Why are you all acting like this is normal? What is wrong with you people?
You know, it's sad how every year this gets more and more relevant. An unfortunate fear with many parents nowadays is school shootings. Like the idea you can send your kid to school and they'll come home traumatized, or physically hurt, or just not come home at all. But because, unfortunately, we tend to follow a news cycle of let's focus on this for a couple of weeks, blame people, advocate for this, and then move on to something else, well, many people, unfortunately, just treat it as another fact of life, unless it affects them. Or if they know somebody who was personally affected, like say a teacher or a student. For instance, Randy does inquire to Stan,
Who shot up the school? Was it you?
No.
Did you get shot?
No.
Oh. Well, what's this about failing a math quiz?
at least he asked. That's probably more than most of the parents did. South Park Elementary has one, but everybody acts like it's as normal as rain. Like, it's annoying, but it just happens, and we have a math test to study for, so I'm gonna focus on that.
Why is Token out to get me? There's something going on here.
Another school shooting today has left students in shock and disbelief.
Yeah, Token's probably sick of you cheating off of them all the time.
Sharon is the only parent to be concerned about this, act appropriately, and she's treated as crazy by everybody else.
What is cool about that?
Nothing. I love you, sweetheart. I turn on the TV and dread they'll say something about a school shooting because it's going to set my wife off.
Randy himself even thinks she doesn't truly mean what she's saying. She's just menstrual.
Down there.
Don't you dare suggest that I'm only emotional because
I'm just pointing out that it is around that time.
Get out, Randy!
At one point, they try to show her that Randy cares by lying and saying there's a school shooting, so she'll go to the school. And there, Randy puts on a concert while a shooting happens and while they hear bullets in the background. Maybe she doesn't have clean hands either.
And said there was a school shooting to trick me into going with you! I was just trying to be a part of the big surprise, Sharon. That's what I'm talking about!
She tries one last appeal and it fails, but either thinking if you can't beat 'em, join 'em, or just being plain old gaslit, Sharon follows their viewpoint, thinking she overreacted, and it's kind of hard to watch.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Sharon.
Especially after she learns that Stan was shot, and while Randy is actually concerned...
Should we get down there?
It's not the end of the world.
Oh my god, you act like he scraped his leg on the playground. Like, I don't mean to laugh, but like, holy hell. Even in the next episode, we find out Stan is fine, albeit his arm is in a sling. And he doesn't care either.
Don't understand why we have to go to church every Sunday.
Church is important, Stan. Way more important than video games and TV. Church is about community and coming together.
Granted, I always do headcanon that this is South Park, like this is a town where Satan rise from the depths of Earth, or where Sheila Broflovsky started a war with Canada because her son saw a movie with naughty language, so they're used to anything. But yeah, out of a universe or without any of that context, that's crazy.
Sir?
Shut up! You downloaded a lot of songs. Says here you even downloaded Judas Priest. That's hard time you boys are looking at.
It's weird how stuff like this can happen even today. Like, the methods have changed, but yeah, it still happens. Just substitute money for cartoons. Like, I think that's also what they're going for. But anyway, back in the early 2000s, God, I'm old. Before Spotify and Apple Music, you used to be able to individually buy songs, usually for 99 cents each, which could easily add up. To get around this, some people would illegally download or pirate music, usually from a website like Napster. The boys try to pirate some songs, but they're apprehended by the police for this, and the cops act like they tried to commit arson or drowned a shopping bag full of puppies.
We didn't think it was that big a deal.
They think it's not a big deal.
Not a big deal? You think downloading music for free is not a big deal?
Not a big deal.
Not a big deal, huh?
Sergeant Yates shows the boys the harm that pirating music can do, since celebrities, who are already rich and famous and can afford every luxury, will suffer and starve, but not really.
All he's ever wanted is an island in French Polynesia.
He's gonna get it, right?
I see an island without an owner. If things keep going the way they are, the child will not get his tropical paradise.
A reason I included this was because of the episode's backstory. Matt and Trey found out that South Park was being pirated, because pirating can also apply to movies and TV, not just music. And while the suits were angry, they were delighted, because it wasn't cheap fans trying to get out of paying money, they felt it was legitimate fans trying to show how much they loved the show. And I understand that. I've had copyright problems with making South Park videos. I mean, my entire review of the South Park movie was just one big sorry it's copyrighted thing, because it took me 15 tries and I still had copyright strikes and I was tired, guys.
People are always gonna find a way to copy our music and swap it for free. Besides, maybe our songs would have gotten downloaded for free, but if they were good songs, then people still would have bought tickets to see our band in concert.
But obviously there's nothing Matt and Trey can do about it, because obviously they don't own it. It's UMPG and Paramount. And honestly, I will say, if it's like right before a big holiday, usually they kind of anticipate that and start putting out the bots. But my point is, nowadays, pirating music still happens. True, something like Apple Music or Spotify makes listening to most songs super cheaper and affordable for most people, but how many of you listen to songs on, say, YouTube? Especially if they're in a cartoon or movie and haven't officially been released. Or just, like, say, Maroon 5 lyrics. That's obviously, like, pirating. In cartoons, yeah, that's another thing. With the rise of streaming, many believe it's easier to legally watch things, especially from when you were a kid. And then along came David Zaslav, who cut many shows from HBO Max as tax write-offs. And many other companies followed suit, like Paramount and Disney. True, in some cases you have DVDs or digital streaming of shows on like Amazon, but in many cases, tax write-off basically gets rid of it as a whole. So that means that even if you want to, you can't make any episodes of that show ever again. I mean, remember Coyote vs. Acme? What happened to that? Or Batgirl? They couldn't even get a copy of it for themselves. It was to the point where creators like Owen Dennis of Infinity Train actually encouraged people to pirate their content, because there was no way they could legally watch it otherwise. Plus, as Stan says, while yes, artists do deserve to be paid for their work, being an artist is just that, making art. And it is a cool feeling to know you have fans who love you so much, they'll go through whatever lengths to see your new work. Plus, if a show is big enough, you really have nothing to worry about. It's like a flash in the pan. Also, Cartman made a Christian rock album, but is that really relevant?
You'll never get a platinum album doing Christian rock, Cartman. It was a stupid idea then, and it's a stupid idea now. Yeah, you don't even know anything about Christianity. I know enough to exploit it.
Took out the whole trailer park.
Yeah! Yeah! Now what you say, man? Here!
Awkward. I think you guys know by now that Funny Bot is one of my least favorite South Park episodes. I think it's pretty weak, and Jimmy is weirdly out of character, but I will respect it in one regard, in that it warned us of what was to come. Jimmy does his comedy awards bid and gives the award for the least funny people to Germany. Jimmy, your comedy award show is meant to honor people who did achievements. You aren't the Razzies. Get it together. The Germans get angry and fight back by constructing Funny Bot, a Dalek that makes up jokes like an AI.
What do you see when the Pillsbury Doughboy bends over? Donuts.
Funny Bot does end up becoming popular, but at a massive cost. Many actors start to lose their jobs because of him.
Your comedy award show has put us all out of work!
Now look, I know that I've put every comedian in the world out of work, but you have to admit that in a lot of ways, the first annual Comedy Awards were a big success.
In the 2020s, one big fear for many artists and comedians is AI, who believe it'll replace them. For instance, with voiceover work, a voice is still a part of you, and big movie studios would be willing to steal it without permission to use primarily forever. Heck, there's even shows nowadays that are trying to be made solely with AI, like Winnie the Pooh. Not him, I love Pooh! That came out wrong. Heck, one of the things that the SAG-WGA strike fought for was protection against against AIs. And like many entries on this list, it eventually got its own episode explaining it, with ChatGPT, aka an app meant to use AI to write stuff for you. Now, I am of the opinion that AI can be helpful in certain cases. After all, it's still a tool, and tools depend on who's using them. But it should never replace real people. And with FunnyBot, hopefully that's not a sign that it'll replace us or cause a nuclear apocalypse, because I am scared of both of those things.
You work for a company trying to get Chinese people as customers. Wow, where'd you get that idea? It's okay. I'm sure there's plenty of Chinese people for all of us.
Fun fact, South Park as a whole is banned in China, but we'll get there when we get there. One of the most profitable markets outside of the US is China, since they have a high population and a good economy. But China also has incredibly strict censors, and many companies often go through the trouble of altering their content, especially movie studios, in order to please the censors. Because if your movie is banned in China, well, your international market will take a sizable dent. Like for instance, Doctor Strange featured Tilda Swinton, a white woman, playing the Ancient One, whereas in the comics, the Ancient One is Tibetan, because Tibet is one of those topics that will get you banned in China. And heck, they even had to address the fact they had the unfortunate implication reasons, because they were like, either we upset people or we're banned in China. I don't know, I wasn't around for this, so eh. This episode features two separate plot points that involve the Chinese censors. With Stan, he tries to write his own version of Bohemian Rhapsody, but finds that he has to censor everything, even his own life story. Like he can't mention Winnie the Pooh or organ trade or the Dalai Lama.
They don't want us mentioning organ transplants. They've been accused of harvesting organs from the... Look, it doesn't matter. They just said no to the organ stuff.
Whereas with Randy, he discovers that by catering to China, he's helping them to uphold a draconian system of poverty and forced labor.
No, I don't have any honey. Are you prisoners here?
Some people said Pooh looked like the Chinese president, so we're illegal in China now.
Also, while I have your ear, I found out that Winnie the Pooh, well, the band is kind of weird. Some people have been saying he isn't banned anymore. It's mostly just restricted to the internet and movies. Like anything that can be memed, like Christopher Robin and Blood and Honey, weren't allowed to be aired, whereas books and toys featuring Winnie the Pooh are still allowed. And apparently, he and his friends are still featured at Shanghai Disneyland and Hong Kong Disneyland, and he still has rides there that are very popular, so take that as you will. Basically, in China, you could include Winnie the Pooh, you just can't include a joke that the Chinese president looks like Winnie the Pooh. But anyway, Stan decides it's not worth the trouble compromising his values and leaves the project.
I want to get away from that farm. It's not worth living in a world where China controls my country's art. I want to be proud of who we are, and anybody who would betray their ideals just to make money in China isn't worth a lick of spit.
Whereas Randy does sell out to the government by killing Winnie the Pooh in order to show he means something. When this episode is voiced by Brock Baker, aka the original voice of Stolas.
You already have business with the Chinese. You have all the connections money can buy. But there's one thing you don't have, and that's integrity.
Now, as a result of this episode, less than days later, well, South Park got banned both on Chinese streaming and on social media. You can't watch it in China unless you have a VPN. But Matt and Trey weren't scared, and even during the next episode, they kept taking pot shots at China. I don't know what else to say besides they probably knew this would happen and they did it anyway. And if you want to know why HBO Max bought up the streaming rights and not Apple TV, this is why.
Okay, on Saturday we march.
Ooh, march? What are we marching for?
To bring down the South Park flag.
Oh, I gotta go.
Change the flag, change the flag, change the flag, and then take a hot shower. Shiv goes nanners concerns the idea of the South Park flag. Jimbo and Shiv have a disagreement over the South Park flag. Avi then go to the mayor to settle the issue.
I want to hear you both out and do this in a civil and constructive manner so that I can give you both the time and attention you deserve.
Mayor, it's about the South Park flag.
Oh, Jesus Christ, not this again.
Jimbo thinks the flag should not be changed because it's a piece of history, whereas Shiv believes it should be because it's a racist piece of history and represents a black man being lynched by white people.
I'll have my assistants hold up the flag, and you tell me what exactly you find racist about it.
You don't see anything wrong with that flag?
Yeah, he's got a point. The issue becomes so big that even the students of South Park Elementary get involved as part of their classroom debates. Both sides become suckered into the debate. Chef lets his dislike of the other side turn him into a racist, because he isn't willing to hear out the other party.
You don't think they should change the flag?
Not really. Yeah, we don't see what the big deal is.
Well, that figures you don't, because your cracker parents turn you into little cracker racists.
Plus, I hate to say it, guys, minorities can be racist because we're still people. We can learn and change and grow and make mistakes. Shep believes that if you don't want the flag changed, you're automatically a racist, which is kind of a racist-like viewpoint. Maybe they don't want the flag changed because they don't know what the issue is. When honestly, there could be reasons, like maybe the flag is that way because it honors an actual historical event that maybe it seems bad, but with context is actually super positive, or maybe there's a reason we'll eventually get to. While Ned and Jimbo unintentionally find that they're on the same side of the Kentucky Fried Chickens.
We're here to support your noble cause.
Hey now, we don't want your support. We're not racist. This is about history.
Well, whether you want our support or not, we're on your side.
Who in this world basically use their racism as an excuse to have a glorified supper club clubhouse with tacky outfits and cake raffles, but they are still racist, so eh. The kids hold the debate where they reveal they actually aren't prejudiced like everybody assumed. They literally don't see race. And not in the sense of, oh, I want to avoid the fact that I'm a racist. They literally don't know that was meant to be a black man. They thought it was just people.
Why, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. All they saw when they looked at that flag was 5 people.
This act warms Chef's heart, and Jimbo, having seen the light, decides to compromise with him by changing the flag on something they can all agree on, which is basically the same flag, but now it involves everybody of different skin tones smiling. Yay, togetherness!
Wait, I don't get it. No, see? There's people of all colors. And they added a black guy as one of the hangers too, so it's not racist.
Hooray!
I have to admit it, that is a lot nicer.
But the reason I think it comes true is, well, a variety of reasons. First off, let's start with the central theme of changing the flag. In the southern states, for instance, one of the most controversial topics is the Confederate flag. During the Civil Rights Movement, the Confederate flag was used as a sign of resistance against the movement. And because of that, it became a part of the identity of the South the same way I Heart New York shirts are for Manhattan. Heck, I used to visit Myrtle Beach like almost every summer as a kid until like college, and there were dozens and dozens of little trinket stores, and they all sold Confederate flags as merch, like flags themselves, cups, like beach towels for some reason. As a result of more progressive attitudes, many believe the flag should be changed or removed, because even if it is a symbol of the South or whatever, yes, it's still a symbol of hatred. With the former being because many southern states do still contain the Confederate flag in some way, shape, or form, like Alabama. With the side that wants it changed, yeah, I just said it's because of the racist history. Whereas with the side that wants it to stay the same, it's because maybe for some they're racist or hate, they think it's a part of history, so maybe we gotta protect our history. Plus, I feel like in some ways you could substitute the flag for, say, statues of racist political figures getting torn down, especially with this becoming more common nowadays.
Chef, what about the baseball team, the Cleveland Indians, huh? Should they change their name because it's racist?
Yeah!
No, because it's their history!
And honestly, it seems like the creators kind of realized this considering the episode Holiday Special, where Randy and the school board team up to get rid of Columbus Day, since Columbus was a genocidal conqueror.
We almost got it, guys! Come on, throw the ropes, Dad! Good, that's good! Okay, hit the gas, Nelson!
Until they compromise themselves and decide to change it to Indigenous Peoples Day, so it doesn't honor Columbus and you still get a day off.
It will still be a holiday, but instead of Columbus Day, it will be for ripping on each other and tearing each other down. And we will call it Indigenous Peoples Day.
Granted, this is a bit of a tangent, but I do wish with both episodes they kind of focused on the history behind it, because while I do agree with Wendy, i.e. our cultures and values are ever changing, so therefore our history is ever changing, well, sometimes I feel like history isn't black and white, and it's important to educate yourself on why that happened. With Columbus, for instance, one reason his holiday got so major and why we honored him was because when Italians started to emigrate to the US, they were persecuted. So they found Columbus as an enshrining figure, since he was Italian and he was a symbol of nationalism. So many Italians rallied around him and lobbied for Columbus Day, which to them wasn't meant to celebrate him so much as their cultural identity. Remember, this was back when, I don't know. And I am Italian for reference. Colorado, for instance, which I'm surprised this isn't an episode, has replaced Columbus Day with Francis Xavier Cabrini, an Italian-American nun who helped Colorado in its time of need. I just feel like Chef Goes Nanners could have done something similar, where maybe the flag is based on a real historical event, or there's a reason it's like that, and it muddles things. I don't know, I'm spitballing here. This section is going on way too long.
Britney, that last lyric is supposed to be love elation. Sounds more like you're saying love creation. Elation. Really enunciate the L.
Why is it this episode always lands on my top 10 South Park lists? Trust me, I don't intend this, but this is a sign the episode is that good. Britney Spears is all the rage in South Park, mostly because they just want to gawk and stare at her.
You can also definitely see a boob job scar. No doubt now that she's had plastic surgery in the past.
Ouch, that's gotta be embarrassing.
The media portrays Britney as a destructive person who deserves all the bad things that befall her, but the truth is much, much worse. But we'll get there when we get there. The boys discover that Britney is hiding out in South Park, so they pretend to be her sons to get access to her. That way they can take a picture of her to sell to the paparazzi.
Yeah! All right!
You mean it was just a joke? My kids ain't here?
All right, Butters, go get next to her. I ain't doing it.
But okay, let's get back to this. As it turns out, Britney isn't gross or a diva. She's just a poor, sad woman who the media refuses to leave alone. And because nobody leaves her alone, and she's been tricked one time too many, she tries to end her suffering once and for all.
We should have just left her alone. But we just had to push her.
How could we know she would...
But she survives, and she looks like this.
Miss Spears, these boys wanted to say something.
Oh my God!
Oh no!
Oh my god, poor Britney. I think a reason this came true as well, we always see celebrities, especially female celebrities, even though, yeah, Aaron Carter was a thing, crash and burn. And because they're in the spotlight, we tend to think they're immune from criticism, like, oh, this poor person with their money and their fame, they can just throw money at the problem and it'll go away. Yeah, that's not always true, guys. Have a little empathy. They're still people. It's okay to feel sorry for them even if they're rich. Not to mention that Stan and Kyle do try to help Britney, but all of their attempts fail, and the paparazzi just won't leave her alone.
Britney, where are you on drugs, Britney?
Hang on, she'll be out in a minute.
But for this episode, you do need context. Around the time it aired, Britney was having a lot of personal problems. She shaved her head, apparently had substance abuse, attacked a member of the paparazzi, which, considering this episode, can you really blame her? And at one point, she locked herself in with her son so she wouldn't have to give them to their father, who I hear is abusive. Several times she was committed. But in hindsight, yes, this wasn't a crazy diva. This was a woman who had genuine mental health problems and really needed help in privacy, but we ignored it for our own selfish wants. And as a result, she was placed under a conservatorship with her father as the head, which basically meant any decision made for her or her money was made by somebody else, because apparently she couldn't make decisions herself. But this conservatorship was even worse than what was left in. She was often put on lithium she didn't need, which often caused her to space out, and if she didn't perform, she would lose many privileges. She had to attend therapy at a spot that her conservators knew had paparazzi, which is arguably one of her triggers. That's like taking a PTSD veteran to a gun range. She couldn't leave her house for as long as a month at times, with nurses keeping her at bay, and she was forced to have an IUD and not allowed to remove it if she wanted another child. So not only was she physically robbed of her autonomy, she was robbed of her bodily autonomy. When she was at a point where she was fine and could make decisions for herself, this went on for over a decade until the Free Britney movement helped her end a conservatorship conservatorship and brought the abuse to the public eye. She even said, "I basically want my life back. I want to be able to drive my car. I want to be able to live in my house by myself. I want to be able to say who's going to be my security guard." I don't know if Matt and Trey knew something we didn't, or they saw the signs for what it is, but yeah, wow, rewatching this episode, it's so powerful even today. In universe, the reason people abuse Britney is for corn harvest, reasoning that if they make a woman famous and then hound her until she wants to end it all, they will have a bountiful harvest.
We hadn't told you about it because we like to wait until kids are a little older to talk to them about ritualistic human sacrifice for harvest.
Corn harvest.
But you could easily substitute corn harvest for money or attention or fame yourself. Like, look at me! I took a picture of Britney while she was on the ground crying and asking me to not take a picture of her. At the episode's end, the mob decides to turn their attention to Miley Cyrus.
Though only 15 years old, is already on her way to being a major superstar. Looks like next harvest will be even better.
Which I know they meant as a joke because of Hannah Montana, but oddly, I think they also hit the nail on the head without even realizing. Miley did have a lot of problems and tried as hard as possible to shed her teen image. And they even made an episode on it called Taming Strange with Fufa substituting for Miley. What are they going to try to harvest this time? Tomatoes?
It was here. It was all right here. There was a techno dance club.
Stan, you need to lay off the cough syrup, alright? Seriously. I'm worried about you, man.
Outside of Cripple Fight, but you watched my honorable mention section, hopefully. This entry will mostly concern the episodes Big A Al's Big Gay Boat Ride and Followed That Egg, and the ones where Mr. Garrison comes out. South Park came out in the late 90s, and even back then, gay rights were starting to get traction, but only so-so. I mean, a 1996 poll, which came out a year before Big A Al's Big Gay Boat Ride, said that only 27% of Americans supported gay marriage, while 68% opposed it. It wasn't until 2011 that a majority of Americans were in favor of gay marriage, and you can take South Park as partially the reason why. Stan's dog Sparky is showing some odd behaviors as of recent. He's being odd with other dogs, the other male dogs.
Sparky! Bad dog! What? Yeah, dude, I think your dog is gay. What do you mean?
Even though he's supposed to be tough, even though you can be gay and tough at the same time, it keeps happening, so Stan goes to authority figures to ask about it. They say that Sparky is gay, and being gay is apparently evil or some crap.
Evil right down to their cold black hearts, which pump not blood like yours and mine, but rather a thick, vomitous oil that oozes through their rotten veins and clots in their pea-sized brains.
Mr. Garrison will get to you when we get to you. Sparky eventually overhears Stan's worries and decides to run away. Thankfully, he's taken in by Big Gay Al in his first appearance, who protects persecuted animals.
We're all big gay friends here. Would you like to live with us? Come on in, little fellow. Nobody will ever oppress you here.
Now yes, Big Gay Al is a literal stereotype, but you have to remember, stereotype aside, he's also a level-headed, polite man who is great with kids and pretty knowledgeable about social issues. Stan eventually finds Sparky, and Big Gay Al is the one who sets him right. It's perfectly normal after all.
Oh, what do you think, Stan?
Just kicks. Sorry I tried to change you, Spark. I just didn't understand.
Isn't this precious?
And it's Stan who goes back home and tells the people of South Park to accept Sparky, and by extension all their pets.
I want to thank you so much for bringing everybody here.
Oh, there you are, dude. How's it going?
I'm super, thanks for asking. It looks like now my work here is done.
And because they now listen to Stan, their pets have come home. Yay! Now I guess in South Park terms this isn't anything major, but yeah. You have to remember back then this was probably one of the first big South Park episodes to get traction, especially in terms of them eventually doing current event satire. But yeah, nowadays homophobia and whatnot still exists, I hate to tell you. As shown in Follow That Egg, Mr. Garrison, now Janet, wants to rekindle her love with Mr. Slade, who broke up with her when she transitioned. But to her horror, he's now with Big Gay Al.
Something you should know. Al and I are getting married.
Married?
Yes.
You can't get married!
They're happily engaged and they want to get married soon. But just as soon as the governor of Colorado signs a bill making gay marriage legal in the state. Out of jealousy, Janet decides to lobby against the bill, but the governor is confused.
Then this bill gets passed and now all the people against it want me to veto it. Why do I have to make this decision?
Because you're the governor?
Janet argues that if he signs the bill, he would be giving gay couples the same rights as straight couples, which would include the right to be parents.
There's never been a study done which proves that either way.
But if you had such a study, Mr. Governor, I will get you that study.
Obviously, nowadays, we know that any couple can be a pair of normal parents, and a nuclear family unit isn't the end-all be-all, because there is no such thing as normal. Love conquers all totally, but I think that's a fear that still somewhat happens. Remember, gay marriage was only established in the US, like, nationwide, because of a Supreme Court case, which could easily be overturned. I mean, I grew up raised by women, albeit they were all, like, related by blood. It wasn't until 7 years later that it entered into federal law, and even that some people are divided on. Besides, it's still unsafe in certain parts of the country today despite the legal right. Like, we even have sundown towns still.
Boys, I'm really proud of you. You've done an amazing thing for gay marriage rights.
What did we do?
Okay, now we can get to Mr. Garrison. In the early seasons, it was a running joke that Mr. Garrison was closeted, but he finally realized as much when he wrote a novel, which was mostly about male parts. So, after that book got traction, he ran into the mountains to hide. Diane shows up to learn how to properly discipline the 4th graders, and he realizes that much like her, he has to confront a part of himself he's repressing, because only then will he truly be free.
I am gay! You hear that, everyone? I'm gay! I'm gay! I'm gay, and it feels good.
The thing is, yeah, this was the early 2000s, so Mr. Garrison gets fired, which I think does date it a little, but I think even if many people are accepting, well, it's still hard to accept that part of yourself. What will my family think? What will people think? What will my friends think? I'll even apply it to gender. But I made a whole video about Janet with Lily Simpson, and hers is like 4 times long, so go watch that. But even in some parts of the country, I could still see a teacher, like, getting fired for being gay. I mean, teachers can be fired in some places because they were at a bar.
He kept gaining momentum, and by the time we were all ready to say, okay, let's get serious now, who should really be president, he was already being sworn into office. We weren't paying attention.
Oh dear God, talk about prophecies. Like, this whole episode was obviously written as a joke, like one of those they just thought, like, phew, we averted it, and it still came true. But joking aside, I'm surprised they haven't done a Canadian Thanksgiving episode yet, since, you know, that is coming up. A bunch of Canadians start to emigrate to South Park as a result of the government of their country, and Mr. Garrison has a problem with it, because he doesn't like Canadians. I mean, this is also the same guy who doesn't like Mexicans, so it fits in.
Did somebody over here say illegal immigrants? Because the correct term is undocumented immigrants. All right, bruh? It's like nobody cares.
Now, for reference, this episode came out in 2015, when the Republican primaries were coming up for the 2016 election, and nobody seriously considered that guy a candidate. But the episode shows why somebody would be willing to support him, why he had a big following, and why we ignored it until it was too late.
He didn't really offer any solutions, he just said outrageous things. We thought it was funny. Nobody really thought he'd ever be president. It was a joke.
Mr. Garrison doesn't like the way things are changing, what with South Park getting too PC, as it's not what he's used to. And he doesn't like the changes he now has to make to his classroom to be more inclusive, like taking Canadian language courses, for instance, because clearly ESL doesn't exist. But then again, PC Principal is in charge. I could see him thinking ESL is like a hindrance because it's singling kids out, even though, yes, speaking from experience, some kids definitely do need that extra instruction. So Mr. Garrison ends up voicing his complaints at an assembly, and it gains a large following.
Yeah, and I'm Dan Rather, and I got news for you. Nobody wants you here. Sorry, not sorry. It's time for someone to say it like it is and make our country great again.
But everybody dismisses him as intolerant, which, yes, to be fair, he is, but they don't realize how powerful his words are, or how much they're appealing to people. And after he insults the Canadians one time too many, well, he gets fired.
Oh, see, now I'm fired.
That's the cold hard truth of immigration. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking here, kid. Sorry, not sorry.
The thing is, this just lionizes him more, since he doesn't understand why the Canadians are coming, he just doesn't like it. And it proved to him that he was right, i.e., if you do speak up, you will get put down and punished for it, especially if it's against a mainstream opinion. Really, in this situation, I think what would have been best is to educate Garrison or the people he's representing, like why the Canadians are coming, why they aren't stealing jobs, all that good stuff. See, while this is going on, Carpin fears the Canadians too, so he decides that the only way to fix things is to have a South Park boy date a Canadian girl. The task falls to Butters, who dates a girl named Charlotte. I should make a video on these two. And while at first he just does it to avoid a potential race war, well, he soon starts to fall in love with Charlotte for reals. Well, in slow Cosby. In Canada, we call slow Cosby love. He does end up getting invited to dinner with Charlotte's family, where they're eating Frito pie, yum yum in the tum tum. And Butters wonders that if they love their country so gosh darn much, why are they leaving it?
Wait, you don't want to be here?
Why would we want to be here?
Well, you know, 'cause everything is great here and we have cool stuff.
Well, Butters, with most immigrants, it's either because they need new opportunities which don't exist in their home countries, or they have a problem back home they need to escape. And unfortunately, in this case, it's the latter. And the new Canadian Prime Minister is to blame. Which, yeah, they treat him like a dictator, but he kind of is. Like, he built a wall and everything. They tried to warn us, and we didn't listen.
Is that right? Yes? Yeah, CNN is confirming that Canada has built a wall to keep us out. What do you mean they built a wall?
But what is it with Canada in this world having like the worst prime ministers? I mean, remember when that one dude banned wine, revoked all adoptions, and got rid of the horses for Mounties, and also said you had to do it the normal, quote-unquote way? Like, how's that gonna be enforced? Like, how is he gonna know? And now this one guy? True, I am of the opinion that sometimes you can't change a person's mind, and unfortunately, bigots can still learn and stay bigots. But yeah, hearing it from the other side and educating the other person can immensely help. They just need to feel a need to want to. And I feel like in this case, some of Garrison's followers, especially Jimbo, would be willing to listen. Garrison rides in a barrel down Niagara Falls to get to Canada, and somehow survives, and discovers firsthand that this place kinda sucks. It's a literal ghost town without any ghosts, and there's a literal wall to keep out Canadians. Who paid for it? I'm sorry I had to. Okay, South Park joke. But does it keep out the Mongolians? But he came to do one thing and one thing only. Kill the Canadian Prime Minister in that style that the previous Prime Minister banned.
I think I've proven that my policies work to get things done. I know what my true calling is. And I'm gonna keep this going all the way to Washington!
Yes, this episode was satire, but wow, South Park was ahead of its time. Like, honestly, they never expected this would happen. Like, they figured Garrison would just go back to teaching at the end of the season. But this is a huge issue I eventually want to cover in a November video, so I'm gonna hold off until then. I just think it's funny and darkly funny in hindsight.